Welcome to Africa Vision Voices. Now this is where your voice matters, and most importantly, we delve into the African narrative, the African story, and the development idea. This is in conjunction with Good News Production Africa and Imani Media. Besides, my name is Francis Msakali. Now this week on the show we speak to David Mavia, a micro-publisher and a teacher. We speak candidly about making a positive change in the African society, plus Africa's top 10. And this week we're looking at the education champions, nations providing quality education in the African continent. Stay with us. You're watching Africa Vision Voices, a look at our top African news developments tonight. Sudanese armed forces fire towards positions held by rapid support forces in central Omdurman in a battle to cut off access in the areas from their foes. The Assistant Secretary General for Africa in the Department of Political and Peace-Building Affairs and Peace Operations said Wednesday that fighting in Darfur was deeply worrying and could quickly engulf the countries in a prolonged ethnic conflict with regional spillovers. Some Nigerians in the streets of Lagos urged the bloc not to hastily enter into conflict with Niger. Representatives of the rainforests also in Africa and Southeastern Asia joined a summit of Amazon countries in Brazil on Wednesday to begin charting a common cause for preservation of the ecologically diverse regions that are crucial in countering climate change. And also this week, Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa addresses thousands of supporters in the capital Harare on Wednesday in preparation for elections later this month. ZANU-PF is the only people's party. It possesses unmatched mobilization, he says in his speech to thousands of supporters. And also this week, Mane in an interview reveals that he turned down advances from former Liverpool teammates Roberto Firmino and Fabinho when deciding on which Saudi Premier League club to join. And we're starting with the largest nation in Africa, Sudan. The situation remains worrying in Sudan, a country hit by conflict between the army and rival military factions since April. On Tuesday, 8th August, the Sudanese army stepped up its efforts in advance into the capital, Khartoum, triggering some of the most violent clashes since the crisis began. Now, since Monday, witnesses have been reported General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan's army has been carrying out airstrikes and using heavy artillery with the aim of taking control of a bridge over the Nile, which the paramilitary rapid support forces used to transport reinforcement and ammunition from towns adjacent to the capital, Omdurman and Bari.
Sudan's army on Tuesday intensified efforts to gain ground in the capital, Khartoum, in some of the heaviest fighting since the start of the conflict with a rival military faction that has caused a growing humanitarian crisis. The army has launched airstrikes and heavy artillery since Monday to try to take a bridge across the Nile used by the rival Rapid Support Forces RSF to bring reinforcement and weapons from Omdurman to the other two cities that make up wider capital Bari and Khartoum, residents said. The RSF, which occupied much of the capital at the outbreak of fighting in mid-April, responded forcefully, resulting in heavy clashes in residential neighborhoods and civilian casualties and displacement. Neighborhood activists in eastern Omdurman said at least 9 civilians had been killed. Both sides have claimed military advances in recent days, but there are no signs of a decisive breakthrough. Efforts led by Saudi Arabia and the United States to secure a ceasefire have stalled.
Now, Sudan's escalating conflict has driven more than 4 million people from their homes, according to the UN figures. Ongoing operations in the Omdurman were confirmed on Tuesday, that is on August 8th, as reports said. The Sudanese army stepped up its efforts to advance into the capital. Mata'am Akia Pobi, who briefed the Security Council on the situation in Sudan, called for a return into the negotiations. Now, the United Nations, which serves as this month's Security Council President, called on parties to put down their weapons.
Sudan's escalating conflict has driven more than 4 million people from their homes, according to UN figures. Ongoing operations in Omdurman were confirmed on Tuesday, as reports said the Sudanese army stepped up its efforts to advance into the capital. The UN Assistant Secretary General for Africa warned Wednesday of a possible prolonged ethnic conflict. The region of Darfur has seen some of the worst bouts of violence in the war.
The fighting in Darfur continues to reopen the old wounds of ethnic tension of past conflicts in the region. The brutal violence experienced in El Geneina and Serba are particular examples of this situation. This is deeply worrying and could quickly engulf the country in a prolonged ethnic conflict with regional spillovers.
Martha Ama Echapobi, who briefed the Security Council on the situation in Sudan, called for a return to negotiations. Sudan was plunged into chaos in April when simmering tensions between the leadership of the military and the paramilitary RSF exploded into open fighting.
Nigerians are reacting to the ECOWAS plan for further sanctions on Niger following the military takeover of the country. Now, some Nigerians in the streets of Lagos urge the bloc not to hastily enter into conflict with Niger. Now, Niger's new military junta has far rejected international efforts to mediate and is holding the country's democratically elected leader, President Mohamed Bazoum, under house arrest. ECOWAS had threatened to use military force if the junta did not reinstate Bazoum, but the deadline was ignored and no action was taken.
Nigerians on Wednesday reacted to an ECOWAS plan for further sanctions on Niger following the military takeover of the country. Niger's new military junta has so far rejected international efforts to mediate and is holding the country's democratically elected leader, President Mohamed Bazoum, under house arrest. Some Nigerians in the streets of Lagos urged the bloc not to hastily enter into conflict with Niger.
Africa as a whole, especially the western region, has been under bad leadership. And I think ECOWAS never at any point in time embraced themselves to come together to help the citizens with good governance. So when people now decide to now take over government, the juntas in Niger and the rest of it, the citizens of Niger, they love what is happening. So I feel that ECOWAS coming in to replace democracy back in Niger is an effort that's not going to make a whole lot of sense.
It's not a time for us to hurriedly go into war with Niger Republic. It's a time that we must explore all diplomatic measures to try and see how the issues can be resolved. Even when you go to war, you still need to go to the round table and iron out some of this issue.
Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is leading the ECOWAS push. On Wednesday, a Nigerian delegation led by the former Emir of Kano met the junta leader. The Emir was one of the few people allowed to meet Jenny.
Don't be kind to history if we simply say ECOWAS and Niger. No. President Tinubu got caught up in the web. Why? Because he's the chairman of ECOWAS. And as a democratically elected president, it will not be in his interest to want to allow coup to fester in ECOWAS countries.
Niger is the fourth country in the 50-member state bloc to have experienced a coup in the last 3 years. ECOWAS is expected to meet again Thursday in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, to discuss the situation.
Representatives of the rainforest nations in Africa and Southeast Asia joined a summit of the Amazon countries in Brazil on Wednesday to begin charting a common course for the preservation of the ecologically diverse regions that are crucial in countering climate change.
The Amazon nations were joined Wednesday by the presidents of the Republic of Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and a representative of Indonesia as well as France. The leaders gathered in the Brazilian city of Belém to begin charting a common course for preservation of the ecologically diverse regions that are crucial in countering the climate crisis. The two-day summit is the fourth meeting of the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization countries in 45-year existence. It has been 14 years since the presidents of our countries met. The Belém summit comes at a very different time from the previous three meetings in 1989, 1992 and 2009. Today, denying the climate crisis is just foolishness. But valuing the forest is not just about keeping the trees standing. It means giving dignity to the nearly 50 million people who live in the South American Amazon. The Amazon is the world's largest rainforest, followed by the Congo Basin. Brazil's president said the upcoming UN climate conference shouldn't fall short on funds for forests. We're heading to the COP28 with the aim of telling the rich world that if they want to effectively preserve what is there in the forest, it is necessary to put money not only to take care of the forest canopy, but to take care of the people who live down there, who want to work, who want to study, who want to eat, who want to walk around, and who want to live decently. It is by taking care of these people that we will take care of the forests. The Belém summit reinforces President Lula's strategy to leverage global concern for the Amazon's preservation. Several environmental groups expressed frustration with Tuesday's joint declaration by 8 Amazonian nations. However, the region's largest indigenous organization praised the inclusion of two of its main demands.
You're watching Africa Vision Voices. Time for a quick historical fact and the back timeline about a great continent of Africa.
Africa is the second largest continent in the world and boasts more countries than Asia, the largest continent in the world. Africa is a huge continent and it is divided up into 5 subsections: North Africa, East Africa, Central Africa, Southern Africa, and West Africa. The entirety of Africa covers almost 10 million square miles, which makes up more than 20% of the world's land. Fact number 2. This may be a surprising fun fact about Africa. Due to the fact that there are 54 countries in Africa, there are many different languages spoken. However, the most widely spoken language here is Arabic, spoken by 170 million people, followed by English by 130 million people, then Swahili, French, Berber, Hausa, and Portuguese. There are also many different languages that are spoken in Africa I doubt that you have even heard of.
Welcome back. Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa addresses thousands of supporters in the capital Harare on Wednesday in preparation for elections later this month. ZANU-PF is the only people's party and it possesses unmatched mobilization. Now he says in his speech to thousands of supporters.
Zimbabwean president addresses thousands of supporters in the capital Harare on Wednesday in preparation for the August 23 election. Suspicions over possible election irregularities are rife in a nation that has been ruled by the same party since independence in 1980 and has a long history of disputed votes.
We are a sovereign state and the partners are welcome to assist us based on our own priorities. We call for the unconditional removal of the unjust illegal sanctions imposed on the people of Zimbabwe.
President Mnangagwa told over 150,000 supporters in the capital that they would be lost if they did not re-elect him at this month's 10th polls.
The ZANU-PF is the only people's party and It possesses unmatched mobilization and organizational capabilities.
Zimbabwe votes on August 23 to re-elect the president and legislature in what analysts expect to be a tense affair amid a crackdown on dissent and a disaffected population battling hyperinflation, poverty and high unemployment.
And Senegalese striker Sadio Mane is delighted to have joined Al Nassr in the Saudi League. Mane, in an interview, revealed that he turned down the advances of former Liverpool teammates Roberto Firmino and Fabinho when deciding on which Saudi Premier League club to join. Mane admitted that Al Ahly's Firmino and Al Ittihad's Fabinho attempted to convince them or him to join their respective sides, but the lure of the teaming up with Cristiano Ronaldo proved to be more tempting for the former Liverpool attacker.
Senegalese striker Sadio Mane is delighted to have joined Al Nassr in the Saudi League. Mane, in an interview, revealed that he turned down the advances of former Liverpool teammates Roberto Firmino and Fabinho when deciding on which Saudi Premier League club to join.
Spoke with Firmino for sure, but yeah, I think he wanted me to come to the wrong club, but I'm joking. He always called me, I think, 2 or 3 times to convince me to come to Al Ahly because I had a contact with them from the beginning. But yeah, in this time, I think when Al Nassr came, then I chose to Al Nassr.
Mane admitted that Al Ahly's Firmino and Al Ittihad's Fabinho both attempted to convince him to join their respective sides, but the allure of teaming up with Cristiano Ronaldo proved to be too tempting for the former Liverpool attacker.
Of course, Henderson also is here, so I sent me a message 2 days ago to wish me good luck with my team, and I'm really excited to meet all of these great guys, and also out and on the pitch to face each other for the first time. And hopefully, yeah, I'm gonna win against you guys.
The 31-year-old Mane left Bayern Munich after a single season with the German champion, in which he struggled for goals, was ruled out of the World Cup with injury, and was briefly suspended by the club.
Really happy to be part of this project, of course, and to make sure this league become one of the best for sure. I think if you see how they work on it and how they're doing their best to bring all these great players, I think you can see how ambitious also they are.
Besides Ronaldo, his new Al Nassr teammates include former Manchester United defender Alex Telles and midfielder Marcelo Brozovic.
You're watching Africa Vision Voices. Now this week on the show, we speak to David Paul Mavia, micro-publisher and a teacher. And we speak candidly about making positive change in the African society. That's just in short, coming up in a short while. Before that, time for Africa's education crisis. And this week, we are looking at Africa's top 10. We're looking at the education champions, nations providing quality education in the African continent. And right after that, your feed. You can talk to us on Twitter at musakali_real, at GNPI Africa, and on Facebook, Imani Television Kenya, where we build your faith in Christ Jesus.
My name is David Paul Mavia. I'm a micro-publisher and a teacher. In boarding school, when I was in class 6, I got born again. I had an experience with Christ, got to know, and I got born again when I was going to watch a magic show. Just before I went to watch a magic show, there's a young man who came and told me, hey, let me introduce you to another alternative form of power. So he opened the scripture, those small blue Gideon's Bibles, and then read for me a scripture, and I thought, there's nothing to argue over this. I got born again. 1 week later, I was filled with the Holy Spirit, and then we began life. And from that particular point of view, I can say it's my turning point in life. A bigger part of my life, I was mostly in isolation. In terms of, we would close school, I would be somewhere and I would be alone, maybe with my dad or my mom. High school, the same thing, but those were my formative years of developing a sense of spirituality for myself. So I can easily say, not to cast aspersions on pastoring. There was a lot of self-pastoring, Holy Spirit pastoring, because I was not accessible to a normal, common, nice, interesting church at that particular point. University is when I got my first vibrant community of believers, where we went into a defining moment in my life to begin to know the call of God concretely on my life. But my burden was a burden for what we call discipleship, which I think have been there since that point. I call myself a serial Bible study starter. In this city, I think I've started like 4 or 5 Bible studies that ran for, my last Bible study ran for 8 years. Yeah, and in that 8 years, I have met the many people who I think God has used to just impact them powerfully in their lives. So I am for Bible education. I am for theological education to be accessible to people so they can learn how to convert their spiritual capital to solve marketplace or just day-to-day life issues. Spirituality is that ability to believe in something beyond you. In philosophy, we call it metaphysical. You believe in a metaphysical world. So different religions have different ways of believing in that metaphysical world. But in simple language, it principally just means thinking beyond yourself. So if your leadership is not teaching you how to think beyond yourself, which means thinking about everybody else, then it becomes poor leadership. And if your spirituality does not enforce that metaphysical ability to look beyond yourself and think of others, then it becomes poor spirituality. So if you combine those two and then you throw them into what we call the global agenda, then we have deep-seated African issues. We have leadership that doesn't enforce a definition of a good African. And then we have spirituality that also does not enforce or define what a good African is. One of the biggest challenges of Africa is our inability to have strong, powerful linguistic technology that can explore or conquer other cultures. So I normally say the dominant culture is the one that comes powerfully into a setting, and the power is expressed through linguistic technology. So our symbols, what we call our language, our symbols, we are even having this interview in English. I mean, the technology that we use, the weapons that we use are not ours, they are borrowed. Why? Because somebody thought about them, and you can't think without a language, you have to think with a language. So there's nothing we can call ours in the global culture apart from consumption, which is not nice. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges with respect to Africa, and Africa needs to be re-educated to learn how to have linguistic technology that can translate our ideas, translate our imaginations, translate our stories, and translate our form of philosophy. Everything we say, we think. If we think in a second language that is not originally ours, we'll always be servants to that first language that we are thinking in. Most of us are now even not teaching our kids what we call our mother tongue. Because our mother tongue has become English. Now we even have emojis for our mother tongue. So the challenge with that actually is, so how do we address that? Then it means we have to upgrade our design of creativity. How do I use a first language that is not mine to produce or introduce things that are not in that first language? So it makes a demand on us to be extra creative But do we have the energy and the power to be extra creative? Close to those one. I'm calling it a pedagogy of imitation. Pedagogy just means schooling. A pedagogy of imitation. So we imitate. Why do you imitate somebody? Imitation is normally a path or a shortcut to identity. Now the problem is not imitation. The problem is imitating to bad identity. Now we are experts at imitating to bad identity. I think Paul says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. So you can see Christ is a SI unit of a good identity. But Africans, we are shortcut takers of identity. So bad imitation does not help us at all. A transformed nation is a free nation. So what is being free? What is freedom? The first thing is freedom to think. Freedom to think. Not freedom to think not freedom to think that you're thinking, but freedom to think. Think, what does thinking mean? You have to have at least two kinds of thinking: interpretive thinking and aspirational thinking. Interpretive thinking is where a man or a woman sits down and says, I'm in this circumstance, let me interpret it. So that's what I was talking about, the what question. What is happening here exactly? Why am I going in circles? So that is interpretive thinking. People need to be skilled. So if you are saying a functional education system needs to teach people how to think, how did I get into this hole? Or where am I? I'm in a hole. Adam, where art thou? He says, I'm naked, I'm naked. No, where are you? So we need to Africa needs to come to a point where we say, where are we? What is this? Where are we at? I think you've been seeing memes going around, people painting the continent of Africa, throwing in there China, Asia, USSR, say, this continent. We just think space. Yeah. We know we are the richest continent because of resources. We know all those things, and sometimes they are floated in speeches and stuff for us to say, to get a little bit angry. But you know how media works. After 2 seconds, I'll be scrolling on my Instagram looking for other things. Why? Because it's a good question, yes, but it does not capture my attention to address it immediately. So we have to have critical, interesting thinking that gives me freedom. And freedom of thought means I'm able to respect my disagreement, your disagreement with me. That's why we don't do democracy very well, because if you oppose me, I think you're attacking me. People need to isolate the two differences. When I am thinking differently from you, it does not mean I hate you. So there's a difference between persons and ideas. So we don't have the capacity sometimes to disagree on ideas without disliking a person. So it's never thought. It's never taught. So if I disagree with you, you're looking forward a militia to come and finish me. But the social science actually proves that true ideas, they may not necessarily be good ideas, but truthful ideas have always grown in an environment where there are other equally strong opposing ideas. So our contribution to the continent, what ideas do we have? Are they strong? Are they truthful? Every time somebody throws something at us, what do? I think Kenya, we are famous for KOT. We fight back. Not because we can't fight back, but why are we fighting back? Sometimes we can be fighting back from a place of injury. Yeah, a place of an injured identity. So you can't stand the truth of a person. So the only weapon you have is what? Violence. Yeah. So the first thing about the transformed nation, how does it look like? Freedom. Freedom to do what? Freedom to think. Think what? In interpretive thinking. Not just but you can't stay at interpretive thinking for a long time. Africa has been there for the last 50 years. That's why we do analysis, we do papers, we do researches. We now know our problems. That is an assumption. Do we really know our problems? Anyway, but now we have to go to the next thing. That's why I was saying the what of the issue and the why of the issue. So why have we always come back to A, B, C, D? Why is this thing called democracy not working here? Well, I think the roadmap to that direction, I say it has to be facilitated. That's why I began with leadership, spirituality. And I think the easy picks of leadership and spirituality in any nation is normally government and what you call spiritual leaders. From where the background I'm coming from, I'll say church. They have to be knowledge givers, but not just knowledge givers. It's not a matter of just I've become a Christian, I'm going to heaven. That's not knowledge giving. Knowledge giving is how am I turning my spiritual capital to change what is happening on the ground. So government needs to say, we are going this direction. in the next. We used to have something in this nation called Vision 2030. So we are going somewhere. And I remember I was in one meeting where the former chairman of the Vision 2030 was saying, I can guarantee you that in the next so many years I'll deliver to you a new Kenya. But I cannot guarantee to you that I'll give you a new Kenyan. And government can easily say, this is where we are going in the next 30 years. What kind of a people are we anticipating to be existing in 30 years' time? So that's why imagination, philosophy, thinking, creativity has to be there. So that's what free thinking is all about. Otherwise, I'll create a good weapon and I'll be a bad politician, and then we shall start killing each other. Yeah. So for me, those two instruments, I would say, is, that's why for me now, the kind of things I do is the spirituality element. Is more just, it's educating beyond what you can call just good, nice Bible theology. I do a lot of, right now I could easily classify it as urban discipleship. So one of the things we have understood is urban discipleship is a marathon. It's not a 100-meter dash. We don't bolt. We keep jogging these things. So it's a marathon. So unfortunately, just the same things that Africans are grappling with historically are things most likely sometimes we find our theological perspective of things is not redeeming. So for us as a ministry, what we are doing is we're just moving from the church has evolved in different ways. There's been different impacts. And the impact of the church in different spaces has been like colonialism and slavery, if you could say so. We colonize an area, we build a well, we'll do a school, which is okay, and we think, okay, now we have changed that society. But people's thinking hasn't been changed. So many people are doing different things. I think it's important. But we need to find a way of producing or redefining what we call that thing called the good news. What is that good news? When a man has no water and you give them water, that is good news. That's a gospel of sorts. But that comes from what I was talking about previously. It needs what? A form of thinking. So we are moving from just discipleship that saves your soul to go to heaven, because our eschatology is normally very important. If your eschatology is an eschatology of always ready to take off, you will not be concerned of things of the earth right now. So that's why for me right now, the path we have taken is trying to agitate or activate kingdom thought leaders who will go into that space and activate the thinking of God to redeem that space for the good. I think we are in Africa for such a time as this, and I think everybody has been brought here by God for a particular reason, and the reason of redemption, for that matter. Nobody should think they're too small not to make a dent. Everybody, I think, has a way, and I think sometimes you're just a person or two away from changing something, so from effecting a big change. So most people normally look at themselves and they feel like, I'm so small. Coupled with the other issues in their lives, they feel like I can't even start. And that's why when you're feeding that with an eschatology of takeoff, people just say, we need to just take off. But people should understand that God has put us here for a reason. And that reason requires, is a journey. And it requires us to be attentive to his beckonings. And then we should educate ourselves to be persuasive or persuaded about what God has put us here for. And then Africa will begin to change a person at a time.
Time now for a quick check on the African stories making headlines across the world. Of course, the African continent. Fast-moving wind-fueled wildfires in the Hawaiian island of Maui have killed 6 people, according to local officials. This flames forced some residents to try to flee into the ocean. U.S. President Joe Biden says he's sending help to the state. A gunman has killed Ecuadorian presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio, who was shot dead in the attack. Now, the gunman shot the presidential candidate during a campaign rally. Suspected that he also died from the injuries sustained during the capture, and officials have confirmed. China says it's very disappointed that the White House will not block future American investment into some Chinese tech companies. U.S. President Biden's executive order aims to stop U.S. funding of firms that he says will advance Beijing's military and threaten American national security. North Korean leader says it's calling for more preparations for the possibility of war. Kim Jong-un has ordered an increase in military drills and the production of more weapons. Pyongyang has been firing a series of missiles in recent months that has increased tension with South Korea and the United States. Niger's coup leaders have met with 2 envoys in the capital, Myanmar, Ahead of an emergency summit by West Africa's regional bloc ECOWAS, the group is calling for immediate reinstatement of President Mohamed Bazoum to the military took over power last month. With 2 weeks to go before the elections in Zimbabwe, President Emmerson Mnangagwa held a campaign rally in the capital, and he came to power on a promise to tackle economic problems, but many are struggling with the high cost of living. At least 27 people from sub-Saharan Africa have died in the recent days after being expelled from Tunisia towards the Libya border and abandoned in the desert in relentless heat, according to Libyan authorities. Well, that's just it for this week's episode of African Vision Voices. I certainly hope you did know something about Africa and how you can change and make space impressive in the now and in the days to come. I'd like to leave you with a quote from the great Congolese independence hero and Pan-Africanist Patrice Lumumba. He said, "African unity and solidarity are no longer dreams. They must be expressed in decisions." This was a speech at the opening of the All-African Conference in August 25th, 1960. God bless you and God bless Africa. See you next week.